Everyone, welcome to another episode of Around the Bird Bath. We have a bonus episode for you guys whenever you're listening to this. Typically, we do our bonus episodes on the Patreon feed, the Where Are They Nows, maybe conference breakdowns, but we wanted this one to get out to the masses. We wanted as many ears listening to this one as possible. This is a special Alamo Audible Around the Bird Bath Runners Rising feature. So we're going to look at Runners Rising. The second part of this episode, we're going to be talking with UTSA Baseball alumni Ray Redding. But first, we have the pleasure of having the Runners Rising Project Executive Director, Eddie Benningfield, with us. Eddie is the UTSA alumni 2012. He is a current United States Air Force officer. Perhaps most important, he is the 2022 Alamo Audible Domi Award nominee, Alumni of the Year. Did not win that, but nominee nonetheless. Eddie, how you doing today?
Dan, I'm doing fantastic. How's life treating you back in San Antonio?
It's not too bad. We've been having some rain. We've been having some good rain, but people never know how to drive in the rain.
Well, that's
can't
just
complain.
That's San Antonio tradition, dude. My mom was telling me a couple nights, like I guess whatever that one bad storm that went through. I guess you guys had a series of them. And she was like sitting at the HEB at 1604 in Calabria. I guess the power went out or something. She was wigging out about it, and it's like, man, you know what? I'm glad I'm not dealing with that up here. It's nice and 60 degrees and it's sunny. It's great.
Yeah, and I'm 1604 in Bandera, and so we got a lot of it. But I think Alamo Ranch definitely got the worst of it.
Yeah.
And I actually just bought a truck for my parents, and I was like, oh, please don't get hail damage. Please don't get hail damage. But I was spared nonetheless. So,
dude, a couple of years ago, sitting in Del Rio, I ended up getting had a brand new WRX, literally bought it like it was like 3 weeks fresh, and storm blowed in out of Mexico, and the Doppler radar couldn't pick it up until it was basically like on top of Del Rio. And like I'm sitting out in my apartment complex, and all of a sudden golf balls start falling. So I'm wigging out, trying to figure out if I can put a tarp over this thing. And then the softball started falling. And then the world ended in $17,000 worth of damage later. I got my car fixed.
Ouch.
So yeah. I feel like on the scar tissue, the fear for the new car and the thunderstorms in South Texas.
Yeah, and you just never know when they're going to hit. I mean, because we were just talking about with you being in the Air Force, and I just got out of the Air Force. But I remember in basic training 8 years ago when I knew Texas, I didn't know South Texas because I hadn't been to San Antonio yet.
What squadron were you? Do you remember?
In basic training?
Yeah.
320th, Can't Stop the Rock.
Oh, dude, no kidding. Dude, my dad was a commander of the 320th from 01 to 04. That's how we ended up in Texas, was because of that damn squadron.
Okay. Yeah. I do have to admit, I was fortunate enough to be in Disneyland, like the new dorms.
Uh-huh.
So like we didn't have bunk beds, we had filtered water, our showers worked.
Bougie, look at you. I gotta tell my wife, I think she barely missed Disneyland. I think she was 323rd. I gotta go yell at her and ask her again, but yeah, we drive past that. She's like, look at the spoiled rotten. Oh, your series of expletives tied to it. But
yeah. Well, and so funny story. And for the listeners thinking they were getting a baseball podcast, jokes on you. We apologize. But when I was at tech school over at Fort Sam a few months later, there was a kid, and he was in his second week of tech school. I was in my sixth week. We were both medics, and he was like, "Oh, how's your free ride through BMT? Because you went to Disneyland." I was like, "Dude, I've done everything you have done and everything you will do in the Air Force. Like, don't even talk to me."
Yeah.
And he double tapped his skills and had to retrain because he failed medic school.
Oh my God.
And so I saw him a few weeks later. I was like, well, hey, at least you didn't have that free ride through basic training.
Yeah.
Because he was in one of the,
What a chud.
Yeah. Those are anyway, we could tell stories all day.
Anyway. Yeah.
Eddie, before we start talking about Runners Rising Project, I want to give you the floor. I mentioned the Domi Award nominee. I'm sure, I think you lost to Tariq Woolen, maybe. I can't remember. But
yeah,
do you want...
Which is expected. And frankly, yeah, dude, Tariq for what he's done for the brand, recognition of UTSA by himself. Yeah, totally expected.
Do you want to make a concession speech, or do you want to recount?
No, I am totally fine with Tariq Woolen, the man, myth, legend, winning that one. So hey, kudos to Tariq. you earned it, and awesome to see you doing good stuff in the league.
Well, I'll say this: if you guys keep doing what you're doing with the Runners Rising project, I don't see why you can't run it back in 2023 and take that home and get that award and put the pressure on Jared and Adrian to actually make a real Domi award.
They seriously don't have any real ones yet?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe they do. We can edit this out if they do. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's. I feel like somebody out there has got like a 3D printer or something that we can make those real nice. A little bit of that like gold, the gold paint or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this is what we already know about Runners Rising Project. The goal of starting this whole thing, I believe you said this in an interview about 6 months ago when you guys just kicked things off, keeping our guys at home, keeping them at UTSA. Runners Rising Project was founded in February 2022. Your main goal is pairing with local businesses, financially backing student athletes. That's kind of what we know. Maybe tell us a little bit what we don't know. If you can take us kind of maybe into that back room of Runners Rising Project. I know you're all volunteers. That very first group text that said, hey guys, we got to get on this NIL deal. We got to start moving, like kind of give us the ins and outs of how everything got started.
Yeah. So to just kind of recap for y'all's listeners, you guys were actually the first interview that we did when we first announced that we were around. And part of that is also because Jared's our director of technology. He's responsible for our website and that beautiful piece that is. But a lot of what we've been about is from the beginning is trying to find a way to develop and empower the student athletes at UTSA, right? Like we want to, obviously the goal with a lot of the NIL stuff is trying to find ways to keep the talent in San Antonio, right? It's not to attract talent, but basically try to find avenues for these student athletes. Like let's look Luke Malone. Luke Malone is on partial scholarship. He's I know when we interviewed him last year, he was doing DoorDash. Full-time student, then he's a full-time student athlete. That's 2 full-time jobs. These guys and girls, like if we can find a way to help them try to monetize themselves, be that through contributions that we do get from our donors or through businesses that we're able to go and get them to connect and enter into their own independent deals with these student athletes. I think that's a benefit not only to obviously UTSA and San Antonio and the students, but also to what San Antonio is. I think we have a goal. Like our mission is to develop and empower those athletes and make the leaders of tomorrow in San Antonio and the surrounding area. But it's also to turn San Antonio into what we like to coin as a community-driven NIL, where the community comes around an organization or a university, and they do what they need to help out these student athletes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're here to do. We're here to kind of bang the drum on what NIL is. Obviously, 3 collectives in San Antonio right now. We were the first. Definitely don't have the deepest pockets compared to the other ones, but like you said, we are a dedicated group of volunteers who just out of UTSA, some a little older by 10 or 12 years. I feel old thinking that 12 was 13 years ago. Makes my knees hurt. But yeah, we're trying to better this university and make it somewhere where it's a destination. So your star players get an opportunity to, make value for their time. Because if they're not being paid here, someone else will. Like I did an interview with Kins 5 probably I want to say back in July, June of last year. And really, like, NIL it's either it's the atom bomb when it comes to attracting talent and retaining talent. Really, and this is what we're looking at. It's the retention, because it can either equalize the playing field, so to speak, or it's going to further the gap between the haves and the have-nots within the college sports universe.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get San Antonio to come to the table, if we can get like Taco Palenque, if we can get HEB, like your favorite taqueria on the side of the, off of Calabria in 1604 to come to the table and start supporting these athletes and teach them what NIL is and how it benefits not only the student athlete, but their businesses and that exposure. Like, look, you got a rabid fan base of when UTSA is doing well, people that as soon as you see like Meet Meep or whatever else, or, a Roadrunner, you're going to get a surplus of interest in whatever brand that is tied to that student athlete who's advertising for them. And again, that's how NIL works. It's that likeness.
Yeah, for sure. And I've said this before, like depending on our listeners and how many episodes you've listened to. When I was talking to Ray and Josh, I mentioned this. When I was talking to Don on Twitter, he's boss man, Don. He's connected with you guys. But I said one of the neat things about like what Runners Rising Project is doing and Meet Me Apparel and some of these other ones, all the collectives are great if they're doing it the right way and they have the athletes in mind. But like what you guys are doing is you're giving these athletes something that they can tie their name to, just by how things work out, how life works out. Very few of these athletes are going to go on to the next level. It's just the numbers are just what they are.
Right.
We've got some very, very talented student athletes, some very great kids, but only so many can make that next level. So if they can have that help as they're working towards their degree, have that help while they're, working towards their next step, and they can focus a little less on picking up those extra hours somewhere and be like, well, I'm doing something for this collective and they're tossing me some money. Like, I think that's great. And then they can look back and they can tie their name to it. And then, we were talking before we started recording, like so much is about networking. Now you've got an athlete that you've helped out. So now when they start making those big bucks, they're going to turn back around hopefully and give back to you guys and help that next generation of student athletes.
Right. Now that's in so many ways. Yeah. We hope that Runners Rising is something that will endure rather. And that's definitely hopefully that pay it back happens. We haven't seen it yet just because we're so new. We're barely 15 months into our existence. But it's there's definitely some opportunity there and we welcome it too, right? Like if you go to our website, and I was talking to you about some of the opportunities where we have mentors who have made themselves available should a student athlete engage with us, because again, you hit it right off the bat, right? What's the percentage of players that are going to go pro, right? Like look at football. I would love to see like on the sports, like what is your percentage of like per class? Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 1 or 2. I think this last year specifically with football, that there's definitely been a plus. It'll be interesting over the next year or 2 to see kind of what happens there. But yeah, like I got a really good friend who he was a D3 pitcher up at a school in outside of Chicago, and although he was a collegiate athlete, he ended up getting a degree in like the classics, and then he was active duty, and now he's National Guard, right? Like there's you look down the list, like look at Jarvion Williams, right? He was a running back who, although he did go pro, he did something after it. Now he's coaching. But there's a lot of like, even like, it's like a lot of like the female student athletes too. Like a lot of the sports, softball, you don't necessarily have a avenue out to be professional. So a lot of these are like the collegiate level is the terminal point for their, athletic career, if you will. So how do you get those people set up? How do you get that networking to occur? How do you ensure that I won't necessarily say land on your feet, but it's always, it definitely helps. Those relationships are everything, right? And it's, I hate to say it, good, bad, or whatever about it, but sometimes it is who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's if you're if you're a recognized name or someone's like, hey, I helped you out, like that definitely matters. If we can do that, connect as many people as we can, then hey, that makes it that much better.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned like Luke being a partial scholarship athlete. I think there can be a misconception sometimes, maybe not anymore, because like one thing NIL is showing is it's another way like for these student athletes to have some of their needs be taken care of and be
Yeah.
compensated for the product on the
And
field.
actually, dude, wait, hold on. I don't think Luke is actually partial scholarship. I still think he's pure walk on, if I remember
Is
correctly.
he still?
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't.
trying to remember if he whether or not he was full not if he was getting any type of scholarship back or not. I'm pretty sure he was no just straight walk on, which is
Yeah,
amazing, right?
yeah,
Like
no,
for
for
what
sure. Yeah, so sorry. He walked on. I think now
is
is
he
he
is he
is he
partial? I'm not sure. That's my
I don't
bad.
want I don't want to I don't want to speak for him. I would hope
Yeah.
with what he brings to the table and everything. But it goes to show, they only get, I think, baseball because there's a lot of talks right now with baseball and scholarships in the NCAA because they are increasing the roster limits from like 35, 36 to 40, but they're not changing the scholarship number. So you're allowing the coaches to have more players on the field, which is great opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
but the scholarship number staying the same. This isn't okay. We're going to find 11 guys and give them full rides.
Yeah.
This is analyzing and clawing and wheeling and dealing. Like I remember, I grew up in Minnesota and went to high school up there. Had a very successful wrestling program at our high school. A lot of my friends, as they went to Division One wrestling, it's like, well, I'm getting 25% because so and so's still on the roster and I'm in state, so I cost them less. And so, but this kid's from California, so that his tuition's more, so they're giving him 35%. And I mean, well, I'm getting my books, but if I can get a starting spot, then they'll toss me a little coin. And football's like that because
Yeah.
there's more players, of course, but I mean, it's a whole like process of deciding how to work it and everything. And there might be a shift from year to year. And so it by no
Yeah.
means is it oh, you're a student athlete, you got everything paid for. I mean, these
Well,
kids are working hard and yeah.
here's the public mouth for you real quick. So I'm pulling up the numbers here. So for Division One baseball, it's a maximum of 11.7 athletic scholarships. It can be divided among a maximum of 27 players on a 35 player roster,
Mm,
which is nuts.
yeah.
So what's the cost of what one scholarship? What $25,000 or on or about? So split that 4 ways, and that's helping out a little bit. But man, I don't think that we'll see if that relief comes or doesn't come. But
Yeah.
that's wouldn't it be nice to like try to offset that with an NIL opportunity while you're in school?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And I mean, and I think, it teaches, like I know you guys before you've had these student athletes on for interviews and everything. I mean, even that, the benefit of how to market yourself, the benefit of how to be comfortable speaking in front of these people, like whether when you go to a job interview, you don't want the very first time you're talking to a possible employer to be the first time you had public speaking and in front of someone. So just
Yeah.
getting on the platform and just learning how to talk about yourself and learning how to market yourself and give your strengths and what you bring to the table, I think is another added benefit that people might not think about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times too, like man, like I equate the age of the athlete. You have your onesie twosie that are a little older.
Hmm.
But a lot of times it's people forget that these athletes are still quote unquote kids. Like shit, dude.
Yeah.
Or oh man, excuse me. We're both in our early 30s. Are we mid 30s? Is 33, 32 mid 30s yet? Are we that
I
old
think
yet?
no, 30 to 33 is early, 34 to 36 is mid,
All
and
right, I got it.
37 I'm turning 33 in the fall, so 34 is mid. I'm not quite mid.
Yeah. All right. So I just turned 33. So we're good. We're
Yeah,
good.
we're early 30s still.
It's still painful to acknowledge, but it's like you were what, staff tech before you separated?
Well, so I was a tech sergeant, but I do need to preface it that I
Okay.
spent my entire time in the reserves. So,
Yeah.
like, a tech sergeant in the reserves is like a senior airman in active duty.
Well, maybe this is a okay. Hopefully this isn't a bad thing, but it's
I,
like,
I say that facetiously because it's very easy for us to promote in the reserves. You basically
yeah,
keep your nose clean and do what you're told and you promote. But yeah, for what you're getting to, for I'm sure for your story, I was a tech sergeant.
gotcha. But it's like, yeah, like these kids, it's like having it's like airmen, right? Like you got to teach
Mm-hmm.
airmen how to do things because they don't have the life experience. A lot of these guys, again, 18, 19 years old, yeah, 20 years old, 21 years old, yeah, you see them on TV, yeah, you see them do some amazing things in person or whatnot, and it's like, holy crap, these guys are larger than life. Like, arguably, granted, Frank Harris is he's an old man, like he's almost our age, like for as long as he's been in school, but a lot of the but he's not the norm. Obviously, there's some stuff associated with that, but um, if you can like we've talked to some of these athletes so like where they haven't done a gosh a resume, they haven't done an interview. Hey, how do I do this? How do I balance my finances? Like it's the things that's like, oh, it's like then you realize it's like, oh wait, these are still teenagers. Like I shoot at 22 years old, I didn't know half the crap that or a quarter of the crap that I know now, and I
Mm-hmm.
needed that guidance. And sometimes it's like that's why mentorship outside of the Air Force has its own piece about mentorship too, but even like there's professional mentorship, there's personal mentorship. Like if we can if you can provide that avenue and try to help people with that, that's big too. And that's kind of where we at least try to offer it where somebody wants to talk to us, like when it's like, hey, like I need advice on this. And it's like, cool. Hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do that. And we've done it before in the past. I know we were doing something with Jarvion Williams, Dallas Meeks, and it was called it's called The Wealth Between Us. And it basically just try to provide like a financial literacy course to these student athletes. However, we quickly found out that the athletic department had just started doing something else, and they were making like a mandatory class, which is good on the athletic department,
Mm-hmm.
to basically teach them how to do their finances and different things. So if we can point people towards these different resources, it definitely helps and takes a lot of the questions out of it that, hey, what were you thinking about at 18, 19 years old, right? Definitely not interviews. Maybe.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I remember, so my father-in-law, he was in the Air Force for 24 years, 20 years active duty as a C-5 pilot, and people that he worked with that were a little kind of almost like a generation behind him,
Uh-huh.
they were having a hard time getting jobs with airlines, and they were reaching out to him like, hey, like, what do I need to do? Like, can you help me with the interview process? Because these big airlines like United, American Airlines, Delta, it's like on paper it's like, okay, I flew military airplanes for 30 years and I was like a an O7, like a general or a colonel, but the personality, what they're looking for, they might want something a little more unique. And so
Yeah.
knowing how to tailor that to what your employer wants, or like be kind of read between the lines of like what they're looking for, and taking like what's on the paper and showing them that that's the type of person that they're going to get as well.
Or it's like, yeah, right. It's trying to find the ways like so say you were a position lead, right? How does that tie in? It's like, well, how do I say that this matters to a corporation, right? I mean, I'm gonna crap on my dad for a minute. You know, my dad he did 20 years and he was a space missiles dude, and he got out, got a contract job, and then he lost the contract. There was 9 months of what we'll call fun in the family while he was trying to find a work, and luckily like found a civil service job, but it was because he had program management experience. And then he was able to he finally figured out kind of through hard knocks of how that translates over. And like I listen to a lot of like different podcasts and like my LinkedIn when I am active on it, like trying to different things. It's like try to figure out like, hey, the things that you're doing, how does it translate over? Cool. I led a team of 7 individuals, and we did this, and these are the metrics that we met. How do you add value? How do you get people to figure out these are the things that I'm doing, that I do on a daily basis at school or on my team, that now, hey, this shows that I have some sort of leadership capacity. And when I'm trying to sell myself to, maybe it's USAA, maybe it's Frost. Granted, those are your big kind of like, San Antonio based, organizations, but the things that'll make you stand out versus, oh, I was in a club, or, oh, I played sports. Great. What does it mean that you played sports? Well, elaborate. What did that teach you? What skills can you use that shows your value to that hiring agency or that hiring authority?
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. I mean, that's it right there, being able to market yourself. Let's transition a little bit.
Yeah,
Let's
of course.
talk. Well, so real quick, and I apologize, you might have mentioned this. Runners Rising Project, I believe that you can make sports specific donations.
That's correct.
At this time. You can't make athlete specific donations at this time, just sports specific.
That's correct. And a lot of that is we are slowly looking at how we can evolve to make it athlete specific. We have shied away from it from a pay for play perspective. But that's something that, be it a case by case, be it kind of in the near future, we're figuring out based off of the legal guidance that we have from our legal advisor. Shout out to Jordan Singleton, great dude, on what we can and can't do. So at the very least right now, you can make it baseball specific. However, or any sport specific, right? And we've got a pretty good head on who we want to target with what our deals that we want to enter into. Usually the deals that we are looking to go into are people who are the most aligned with what our core values are. And that is leadership, action, diversity, integrity, inclusivity. So it's lined up for hey, like I can say like I am partnered with this athlete because they have identified themselves as kind of like they're involved in the community. They're a standout on the team. They are a team leader. And then a lot of that is Don Davis, goes by Boss Man Don on Twitter. He's our essentially our scouting and mentoring director. And he's responsible for basically coordinating who we go after. And a lot of these guys, obviously you have the brain of Jared Kalmus that's tied to us. There's a couple other people who are in the wings as well. Caleb Hopkins is another pretty smart one. Farah Hamed, who she's functioning as our director of business outreach right now. She's very close with a lot of the athletes because she's a peer and she's friends with a lot of them. And she's able to tell us who, like, some things that give us some insight that we have been sorely lacking, obviously, because we're a bunch of old men. Relatively speaking, we all look great still, despite what my wife says.
Well, and you want to go about it the right way.
Exactly.
I know Jared has hit on that before. I think maybe about a year ago, he said on one of the podcasts, like it's NIL is basically in a lot of ways kind of the wild, wild west. Like
Yep.
you see the news where Alabama's tossing seven figures at so and so, and then you see someone hit the portal and someone's like, "Oh, checked in clear," like whatever, kind
Yep.
of playing the game a little bit, having fun with it. But you want to do it the right way, and you guys want to be a reputable organization, a reputable project. You don't want to just be putting money in people's uh, pocket, and hoping that the NCAA doesn't come knocking.
Yeah.
But you want to do it the right way.
Right. And here's the big thing too, like the deals that we enter into. And by the way, before I move forward, before Farah does come at me, and she will, it is Farah Hamid. Sorry about mispronouncing your name. All the love, always all the love. But yeah, like our deals, like none of them are tied to they can't be tied to their gosh, what's it called? Their status as a student athlete at UTSA.
Yeah.
And that's we try to, to the utmost of our ability, make sure that everything that we are doing is within line with everything that's been released by the NCAA with regards to NIL, as well as with the state of Texas, because every state's different. I know there's some things that are trying to move through state Congress right now, the state legislature, to potentially lessen some of the restrictions that when they originally put through weren't necessarily looked at as restrictions, but they are now. And I know that there's some things that are happening on the Hill. Granted, I'm a little out of the loop with what is happening in Washington with NIL, which may or may not be more or less restrictive with what's going on with it. Just because, again, a lot of people don't understand it. Our lawmakers and decision makers, either they do or they don't. And that's, again, it takes organizations like us that aren't the shady bagmen, although we, I guess, in a way, are partially the shady bagmen because we're giving money to the athletes, but providing that education of, hey, this is what NIL is. This is why it benefits you. This is why it benefits the athletes, and go from there. Because it is like, I just, went to a family event and explaining what I was like, oh, we don't believe in NIL. They shouldn't be getting paid. It's like, go to school and get your degree. It's like, well, let's look at it what it really, like, let's peel that onion back. Why do you think that?
Yeah.
And it's like, as soon as you explain it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. Wow. That'd be really shitty if I had to work 2 jobs and then I can't make any money. Like, yeah, get out of here. That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, we already hit on the scholarship aspect and maybe how little that actually helps and how many athletes in the grand scheme of things can benefit from that. But even if you are, let's just create a hypothetical athlete. Even if you are on a full ride, well, your car breaks down, you might not necessarily have money to fix your car. You need to travel to visit a family member because something just happened and you need to go out of town. Like your scholarship's not going to necessarily cover that.
Yeah. Or maybe you have a family already. We know a lot of the athletes have kids.
Yep.
Or they're sending money back home because they're first generation college. And it's a very privileged viewpoint to take that, oh, well, you're going to school, you'll be fine. Just call your mom and dad and they'll get you taken care of, like that. Like, and it's out of touch with the reality of what the demographic is that is in college right now, right? Especially at UTSA. Well, I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but I know there's a very large portion of students at UTSA that are first generation college attendees, and that means something. And so it's like, yeah, like, cool, you're gonna make the money, you're getting your stuff paid for, but look at inflation right now. New Jersey and Texas just are about the same. Texas is maybe like 20 cents cheaper on a couple of different things. Gas in particular, kind of shocked there that I talk to my mom like every night. It's like, hey, what's your gas doing? It's like, okay, so we're roughly 20 cents more expensive than San Antonio is. But I went back in September for the Houston game, and like walking around HEB, I was blown away with how expensive it was, and I was kind of shocked that ShopRite's the thing out here, and it's expensive, but HEB's right there with it, and it's all across the country. So it's like, yeah, okay, we're all struggling with full-time jobs, trying to figure it out. What are these kids doing? if they don't have that safety net that, I was blessed to have because my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel and, was rocking, military retirement with a civil service job on the, to back him up. Or, shoot, I mean, you at least have like the GI Bill if you were doing it alone. Like you could, and that gives you BAH tied to it. But like, God, like I couldn't imagine, if I didn't have the support of, and I had a scholarship through ROTC, but like if I didn't have that, like I would be hurting. And then throw like having like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old on that. No, that is it. It could be insurmountable for a lot of people, regardless of how good they are at sports and regardless of how good they are at, the academia side of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and just the time that athletics requires. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, someone we knew, and this was high school, and he was on the varsity football team, and it's like, hey, like when does practice starts? Like, well, it starts in August, but if you want to be getting minutes, if you want to be getting snaps, you're really out there in
May,
middle of June. Those volunteer practices, they're not volunteer. Well, let's transition to baseball specific. So you already mentioned Luke Malone, and as much as you tried to get us to believe it on April Fools, you are not getting behind North Texas. You are staying loyal to UTSA.
Yeah, that was a fun apology to the board, to the group again for my waking up in the wild hair of like, all right, we gotta do this. Let's see what we can do.
Did you get anyone?
Ray texted me and wanted to know if we got hacked. I got that.
Oh, man.
And then our Tyler Jordan, he's a Ole Miss alum, but he's from Charleston, West Virginia, which is up I-64 from where my family's from in West Virginia. But he did some PR stuff for us for a little bit. He asked me, he's like, "Hey, dude, what's going on with the collective? What happened?" And it's like, "Oh, dude, it's April Fool's, man. Come on, you can't trust anything. It's check the date, everybody."
Yeah, for sure. The big one down here, the non UTSA one down here, was everybody was posting that their city was making a Buc-ee's. Like Buc-ee's was coming to Lufkin, Texas. Buc-ee's was coming to so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, I don't think Buc-ee's is dropping in 11, 12 locations on a whim.
No, I mean, they got to be bought out by, by a Chicago-based food conglomerate before they do that, a la Whataburger style. I think, granted, I am a little disappointed to see Buc-ee's, kind of, that's a Texas thing, man. I don't know. It's weird seeing it outside of like Lowling or New Braunfels.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know.
That was actually my unit. That was our morale patch. It was the Buc-ee's Beaver, and we said our little slogan was like risking our nuggets to save yours.
That's fantastic. When we go offline, there's another one that I saw that was a refueling. I don't know if it was Minnesota or not, but it is a relatively spicier patch.
Yep.
That probably disappeared with the most recent pull through for a lot of that stuff. But I'll tell you about it later.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about the athletes you just brought on: Antonio Valdez, Simon Miller, Matt King. How you kind of already talked about when you bring on these athletes, when Don meets with them, what you guys are looking for. What did these three guys have that you were like, we want these guys to be Runners Rising Project athletes?
So the big piece is it's the performance that we've seen from them over the last couple months. They've definitely identified themselves as leaders on that team. A lot of what we're doing right now is given that baseball, again, this is a historic season for the Roadrunners. I mean, what was the highest that we got ranked up to? Was it 22 or 21?
Yeah, so depending on what you looked at, I think Baseball America. Well, there's one out there, and I don't really recognize it just because I look at their rankings every week, and they've got some wonky stuff. Like I don't know how much time they put into it, but I think it's college nation, college baseball nation or something.
Yeah,
They had us at like
D1baseball.com.
yeah,
Yeah, go
D1
for it.
baseball has us at 25.
Baseball America. I'm pulling them up right now. Oh, it doesn't even have a damn. That's lame. Where is it? Oh, I guess it's not gonna do it. Okay. Yeah, but like looking at that and like the RPI, I know the RPI is kind of wonky, and I know that there's all sorts of shenanigans tied to that. And I think we're sitting at like 40. We're still shockingly to me ranked, or not really not shocking, but pleasantly surprised that this year we are well above 41 is sitting on the RPI, and then Texas State. Where are those bastards? There they are, 54.
Yeah, they just had a bad weekend. They just got it was funny because on Friday, UTSA beats FIU 22-8, and
Beautiful.
on Saturday, Texas State lost to Troy 22-6. And I was gonna like quote tweet the post from Texas State's baseball and be like, "Hey, we scored 22 runs." Oh wait, never mind, because they got beat 22-6. But they're pretty sensitive. You gotta be careful with Texas State's Twitter. Like if you just mention them in the wrong way, they'll block you. So
They'll be fine. I got a cousin who misguidedly decided to go to Texas State because it's close to home for him. He's from Round Rock. We tried very hard for him to go to UTSA, but now he's stuck in San Marcos. Neither here nor there. But yeah, I don't know. The RPI is frankly magic to me, but
and that's actually
I think it is to other people.
Well, and that's probably a bigger determiner in I don't know if that's a word determiner in the regional
Determinant?
bids. Determinant,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
like the RPI carries more weight than the rankings for regionals and everything. So
Well, shoot, dude. I mean, last year, right? Like
yeah,
first two out, last two in. Ole Miss like gets it, and they do what they did last year. Like that could have
yep,
been us. Could have been
yeah,
us.
yeah,
They'll be us
and I
this year,
mean,
hopefully.
yeah, I mean they're playing good ball right now. Got a couple guys banged up. Do have a lot of depth, but I think right now, we don't know the status of them necessarily. No Shane Sterdashny, he got a little banged up. He hasn't played since.
Yeah.
Isaiah Walker. Isaiah was out there. I want to say on Saturday he pinch ran or he pinch batted and stuff, but he didn't actually play in the field any. So he's still trying to come back. And then Ty Odom, he's a young kid, a freshman. He got banged up a little bit too.
Yeah.
And
No, like what? Like the Corpus Christi game. Like I know Luke got hurt. I think Simon Miller also may have. Like there was that was a kind of a wild series. A couple weeks, like we were actually in Corpus.
yeah,
Like maybe
yeah, that
like
was
two or
just a
3 weeks
Tuesday
ago.
game.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah, no, but anyway, back to that is like we're trying to put more emphasis on supporting baseball because obviously like hey, the team's doing well. With the scholarship considerations, it's like we're going to try to do something to try to help these guys out and retain that talent. A lot of these guys are young. And like we're already seeing it with football where you have, the bag holders from other schools coming and they're like, hey, come play for us. Here's your 6-figure number. Granted, we're not giving 6 figures out or anything like that. That'd be great if we could.
yeah,
Probably a little different conversation right now, but at the very least, if we can begin to shine some light on who these guys are, what they're doing, what in the context of this season, and hey, maybe UTSA is a baseball school. Who'd have thunk it, and that's kind of what we're trying to get at is if we can throw more support behind baseball, get some of these guys before the larger schools do come inevitably coming this way. It at least lets them know that they're taken care of here and that they're cared for. So it gives that second thought before someone makes a determinant to enter the transfer portal or end up sitting at in Austin or College Station this time next year.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, for the listeners, originally I wanted this to be a kind of giving an update to some of those players that have already committed to UTSA, and it's kind of weird. Baseball's a little different because these kids sign in the fall, but then their senior year is like the spring. So like where you have to kind of wait like a year and a half before you start seeing them on the field for UTSA. But as I was looking and trying to get some updates on how the guys that we highlighted in the fall on our National Signing Day article, it's really hard to find high school baseball updates. And unfortunately, I don't have it in my pocket to subscribe to every single baseball website and the inside access. And the few that I do just didn't really have any meat of it. And so that's why we're kind of switching gears with what this episode is about and what we're talking about. But there's going to be kids coming in, and there's going to be, people, kids coming in as freshmen. We've got a couple JUCO guys coming in. Do you guys have anything like how early are you willing to maybe make deals with these guys, or what type of relationship do you want to see before you're willing to kind of be like, hey, like we want to bring you guys on?
The earliest deal that we've done with somebody is Zay Frazier, who was one of the JUCO guys that were brought on last recruiting class. And we didn't do anything with him until we confirmed that he was on campus and enrolled. Because again, we don't Texas.
Well, sorry, I meant more like grade, like grade level. Like, do you want them to be a certain grade level? Like, do you want them to kind of give their time a little bit, or
it could be like proven leadership, right? Like, obviously, Antonio Valdez is a senior. This is his last year. I don't think he has a COVID year. He may. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Simon is a junior, and obviously this is some upperclassmen that we're trying to take care of. They've gotten some, like Simon, I've got him pulled up right now. Like, hey, he's been Conference USA academic honor roll. He's taking care of what he needs to. And then Matt King, like he's arguably had a. Last year he was on the Conference USA All Freshman team. He's doing some phenomenal work this year, and we want to be able to highlight that and help him out. So it isn't necessarily like, as long as they begin to show like that those leadership traits for us, that's where, or that initiative, like that's where we're going to begin to help out. We will err towards the seniors and the juniors and your upperclassmen, but that isn't a hard fast for us. If that makes sense.
No, for sure. And looking at my notes, just because I was trying to look through and see in preparation for this, like who's coming back, who's still got a year, and it's hard to tell because when you look at the bios on UTSA's website, it's not great about saying if it was the COVID year or not, and if they transferred in, like the JUCO stuff. But it look, from what I could tell, it looks like Antonio Valdez still would have one more year because he did have that COVID year. And then, Simon Miller, his thing is going to be more probably, I don't want to speak for him, but if he tries to get drafted this season in the draft, he's definitely got the skill to play at the next level. So if he forgoes his eligibility or not, and then, Matt King's a sophomore and has made a name for himself ever since he stepped foot in. But
and then looking kind of on our historic deals too, like our first 3 deals were included Luke Malone, right? So from jump, we've been working with baseball. Luke, Ian Bailey last year, Jonathan Tapia, like we've made an effort, and like this year is like we've obviously is like we're always. Football pays the bills, right? Everybody knows that, and we do have our football deals. Obviously, Frank is our rising leader, and then we've got a couple, other deals that we have announced. But as spring is turning into summer, like we're looking at what's next for us, and who are we looking at, and it'll heavily favor baseball, just because of what's. I'm going to say what's at stake, but what needs it right now. And you also have, again, in the NIL space in San Antonio, 2 very football focused collectives, and then we're positioned to support the other sports on a case by case basis. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned them already. Jonathan Tapia. We just had him on the podcast for our last episode a few weeks ago. It would have been our weekend preview, the episode before last, because last episode Jared was on. And then Ian, I'm trying to work with him to get him on and just coordinate the time and everything. But those are two guys that, I mean, they're still in San Antonio. And it's not often you go to the ballpark and you don't see them there. They're usually there, as well as Ryan Flores, still very involved in watching and supporting the guys. And so, that's kind of that very beginning of what we were talking about of, okay, you had a really good career at UTSA, you've moved on, now you're doing something else, but they're still kind of giving back and still, pouring into these guys.
And it's like, I think, I know Jared's hit on it a lot. It's the general age of your, UTSA alumni, alumnus. Words are hard. Like, I think the average age is 40, and then you have it's like I have an uncle who's I'm gonna gag when I say it, but he's a U of M alum, and he bleeds, blue and maize, and he's just gouge my eyes out now. But that those organizations, those universities have a lot of money that comes into them from their 80-year-old alumni base that they went to it. Now their son went to it, or daughter went to it, their grandchildren are at that same school, so you got this legacy that UTSA doesn't have yet. And as we're building this stuff up, those guys are still hanging around. They want to see that team do well because they have a vested interest. Hell, Ray has a vested interest into it. That's that next generation of alumni that the school needs to reach that next level, to continue to be competitive, right? San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the nation, but it's one of the poorest too. And I know we do like to talk about San Antonio being a big city and there's money under, but it's not Austin. It doesn't have the same connections. It doesn't have the same network. That's not a bad thing. It's just that's just the reality of it. You there? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. I thought I lost you for a minute.
No, sorry. I was just letting you finish.
No. It froze and freaked out at me for a minute.
Okay.
So I was just making sure that.
As long as the recording.
It wasn't.
Yeah. As long as the recording got it, they don't need my face. So, well, and that's the thing too. Okay. I mean, lost my train of thought. Oh, I was going to say, FIU, we just played them in baseball, and like Joe Girardi, who managed the New York Yankees, his son is playing for FIU right now. They had like 2 or 3 other guys who uncle, El Duque, depending on how old some of our listeners are. El Duque's nephew was playing for FIU. You don't think that somehow is going to benefit that program by having MLB Hall of Famers, having their kin and their bloodline at the school? Yeah. That's the other thing. It just, and I'm not, that's not to say UTSA can't make it unless if we have Alex Bregman's nephew come play for us or something. But so many schools have these avenues, and just our athletic department as a whole has taken some great jumps in the last couple of years, but there's just so much that we haven't done yet. And it just takes time.
Yeah. And that's what it is, right? There is, I don't know. There's an urgency that is behind a lot of, you see a lot of the moves to the AAC. How high can we climb? Can we get to a Power 5 conference because of conversations tied to rumor, right? And really, but so I think it holds the same weight of rumor of the Spurs moving to Austin. Read that how you will on that, but that's my conspiracy theory. I think the California money is slowly trying to drag San Antonio, the Spurs north, but that's neither here nor there. But like the consolidation of the conferences where you have your Big Tens and SECs become a semi-pro league for, or a feeder league for the NFL, and then that becomes its own siphoned off thing, right? And that's like, are we going to get left behind? I know that's a fear. That is a fear that a lot of people have, and I think it's a healthy consideration too. Like, look at the bird bath.
Yeah.
Well, the historic convo, right? Granted, there's your conversation there. Does our facilities everything? No. Do they help? Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're lucky with Coach Hallmark and his ability to take care of the talent that he does have. And remember, and I think that's a testament that leadership can overcome asbestos and mercury in the floor, but that's neither here nor there. And the transfer portal at times, look at Jeff Traylor. Like, he's able to maintain the talent, the roster that he has on his roster. And I know this is getting into football for a minute, but like, Jeff Traylor is the reason that we haven't seen the impact yet from NIL and transfer portal, because of what he's able to build. Coach Hallmark, I hope. I mean, this is going to be very interesting, and I'm sure, I'm sure he's going to get some phone calls. He should be getting some phone calls if he isn't. But we have to begin to invest not only in our facilities, but in our players as well. Like, it's two sides of the same coin, or we are going to end up here in 2 or 3 years back in, D1 FCS, D2, because of how things have shaken out. And I think there's been some right decisions made on getting us to the AAC, but how do we maintain our competitive edge? Right? Like, obviously, AAC is getting the best that CUSA has had to offer, but how do we make sure that and frankly, and this is really bad, I don't know who the baseball powerhouses are for the American Athletic. I feel like we could beat Temple.
East Carolina, like, I think they're
true,
like top.
True. Yeah.
They're like top 10 in the nation. And they've got a state-of-the-art baseball facility. They're a baseball school. They've always been good. You could put them. They could probably compete in the SEC, to be honest.
And but like, with Rice and their history, with their title, us doing well, in the last year, and frankly the last 2 years, I feel like this is kind of a buildup of last year. Like, we've got to be able to maintain that competitive edge going into it, or we will end up getting left in the dust one way or another, and then that's going to fall back on the university. So how do we do that, and how do we rally?
Yeah, and there's, I was even just today interacting a little bit on Twitter, and somebody was like, basically like, why didn't we get to regionals last year? And I was like, well, unfortunately, the 260 characters of Twitter does not warrant enough space to answer.
Wait, hold
question.
up! I thought if you got a blue check mark, you get like a whole 2-page paper worth of characters now.
No. See, yeah. I'm not buying a blue check mark, because anybody who has a blue check mark, especially now, anything you say, somebody's immediate response is, "Oh, look at this guy, he paid for Twitter." Like, all credibility goes out the window because someone's just like, "Oh, look at you, you paid for Twitter." So I'm not getting a blue check mark.
Thanks, Elon.
But yeah, we've talked ad nauseum this season about the unofficial or official reasons why UTSA didn't get a regional bid. But as a head coach, like, if a magic genie comes and I get 3 wishes and I'm the head coach of a Division I baseball school, if I'm seeing that my ceiling, that every single year I have to win my conference, every single season I have to win 45 games, 46 games, and there's never well, you only won 37, 38. Well, you didn't have a good conference tournament, but you've got a good team, so we'll let you in anyway. That's going to be really tough to keep a coach around, because all of a sudden now the pressure is exponentially more, and going to the American Athletic and having East Carolina and if they can get to a Power 5 conference on the road, obviously those things help. But for the time being, having that pressure of like every single year you got to win conference, every single year you got to pump out 40, 42 wins. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on a head coach.
Yeah. I was gonna say maybe a regional bid will light some fires and make some people realize, oh, hey, maybe we need to do better than bleachers and in the bird bath.
Not even that, but bleachers with no aisles. Like there's no like aisle to go up and down. Like you just step on bleacher all the way down.
Well, you don't have to. What are you talking about? It's only like 5. Like you don't need aisles. It's only 5, rows up. Come on. There's no fire hazard.
Right, yeah. Yeah, man, the bird bath. I love it. I mean, I'm old school. I like, and I think talking about Texas State when UTSA beat them 11-2, one of their fans was like, "Oh, at least we don't have like a high school field for." I was like, and I posted the meme of the Sandlot where the kids from down the road with the real nice ballpark come mess with them, and then they go and just clean them up and just demolish them. I was like, yeah, you just need. I mean, Coach Hallmark said it. In an interview last week, he said, "Listen, it's 90 feet to first base. It's 60 feet 6 inches to the pitcher's mound. It's 400 feet to center field. Like it's baseball. Like he recognizes what they need, but he also recognizes that you can be successful without that. So
it's not all about facilities.
Yeah. So let's kind of wrap it up a little bit on this part, and then we'll get to part 2 with Ray, and that will just be Ray and I. But we kind of already talked about the plans moving forward, what your guys' goals are. You mentioned in that, you already kind of mentioned it yourself just now, but the have-nots to the haves, the benefit of NIL, if you can educate these businesses on the benefit of NIL. But what are ways people can get involved? Like obviously Runners Rising Project on Twitter, your guys' website, but monthly donations, one-time donations. Maybe talk about that as we close
of course. Out. So we have a tier donation. It's 10, 25, 50, and 100. Basically gives you different access to us, and then for insider, booster, trustee, and founder sounds mildly familiar to another organization that has a similar tiering to that. But insider, we have a Discord that you can talk to and kind of go and get access to that. Booster gets you a kind of more of a like, hey, like here we'll give you some feedback, or like you'll see some behind the scenes stuff. Try to do a donor event that keeps functioning as a moving target for us that hopefully we'll finally do in August, and then Booster and above get you access to that. Trustee is where you get to actually help begin to vote on what athletes we work with, and then founder, you get invited to our biweekly staff meetings and be part of the decision making process and what we're doing. Because again, like, hey, like if you're giving $100 a month to us, that's a lot of money for us. Or we're gonna honor your voice in the decision making that we do. There's also one-time donations. Really, you can, if you want to give us $2, you can give us $2, but it's for the one time it's 50, 100, 500, and 1,000 for, again, insider, booster, trustee, and founder. Or like, look, if you don't want to give back monetarily, time is also a finite resource and something that's just as valuable, if not more valuable than that. We are a volunteer-only organization. If you have a skill that you want to give to us and try to help us out with, let us know. Like, hey, we'll put you to work. We'll find something. We're always looking for ways to invigorate our staff and breathe new life into it. Or if you want to be a mentor, hey, I offer this. Great. Let us put you on our website. Passively, I'll put you until like the day that we need to, have an athlete that needs to reach out to you, and we'll get you taken care of. There's many ways. Again, it's community driven NIL, and it's trying to get people, however you can, to organize and generate around this, around these student athletes who frankly deserve it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've said before, because I've had people reach out, and I'm appreciative of Jared and Adrian that are allowing me to kind of come into the the empire that they have built that is Alamo Laudable, and they let me dip my toes a little bit. But my main goal is just drawing attention to these student athletes and the work they're doing. Saw a need with baseball for coverage, and our baseball team last season coming into this season has just played with a lot of heart and a lot of determination. I just want to recognize that, and it's great to see you guys doing the same thing in a monetary way. So I encourage everyone to get involved. The Runners Rising Project, a lot of ways to give back to these student athletes. Every bit helps. We hear that all the time, but that's definitely true. Eddie's, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks so much for giving your time and talking to us about everything you guys have going on with the Runners Rising Project.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dan.
Sorry. So I'm gonna transition. I'm gonna give Jared the opportunity to give me a cumbia break. I've never actually asked for one. I've never actually used one. So this is Jared's as he's listening. This is his me asking permission to have the cumbia break.
Do you need permission to cumbia? Like, I feel like you should just be able to cumbia.
I mean, he cleans it up and he puts it in, so it's kind of his it's his call. We'll see when we listen to it, but we're gonna jump over to talk to Ray. We got some exciting stuff from him, and he's got a big announcement, and it's more about Runners Rising Project. And hope you guys have enjoyed listening to Eddie and I talk about all things UTSA and UTSA baseball, and hopefully you enjoy the bit with Ray. All right, everyone. So hopefully Jared let me into his good graces and gave me a cumbia break, as you just heard me asking for that. But if not, no worries. We're back here with Ray Redding, UTSA baseball alumni. This is Ray's second time on the podcast. And Ray, you are the very first guest, at least for the baseball stuff, to be our first recurring guest. So congrats on that. Well deserved. How are you doing on this fine Friday afternoon?
Thank you, Dan. I'm doing pretty good. I guess before we launch into this, I have to admit something. I'm in a very tough spot here, Dan. Last time I was on, I said some things about the new rules and MLB and the pitch clock and all of these things. I was very against it at the time, and I need to walk some of that back a little bit. The games are a lot faster, and that's wonderful. I'm able to get to some games now and take my young son and still get home before it's too late, which is awesome. However, I'm just not quite used to the game flow yet. It doesn't feel the same. So I'm not 100% in, but I would like to walk some of the aggressive comments that I made back. So forgive me.
No, fair enough. And that's actually why Ray's coming on today, in case you didn't know, just for that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the one thing I'll say that I don't like about it, and people have probably seen this on Twitter, there needs to be some common sense with special moments. Like the Pirates just had somebody, and he got called up after spending however many years, 7 years in the minors, or maybe 12. There's been a couple guys recently that have been called up with some pretty cool stories, but taking in his first at bats, and he got a pitch clock violation because he's trying to take in the moment. And it's like, okay, listen, man fraud, come on. That's our little nickname for him. We understand the flow of the game. Give the umpires the jurisdiction for this. And they have it with other things, like if the player takes a nick off the shin guard or the shin bone, if the catcher takes one, off the inner thigh, they have some freedom with that. But that's what I would like to see, some common sense in allowing those special moments to play out. But yeah, I'm right on board with that. I think it's good for the game. It helps. And there's just something it's interesting. There's something about getting under that 3 hour mark. It's kind of like,
no doubt.
I just sold a vehicle and it had 181,000 miles. Like, so with the vehicle, there's something about when you get above that 180,000 mark. But then with the baseball game, for some reason, you cross over 3 hours, and it's like people now consider themselves, there for at least 4 hours. It's kind of weird. So I'm for it.
Sure. And you know what? The unintended, at least I didn't know about this until opening day. The best result of the new rule is the beer sales, right? Beer sales used to cut off in the seventh inning. Now the new rule is 4 hours after first pitch. So on opening day, we were like stunned, confused, couldn't believe it. We were able to like buy beers in the top of the ninth inning. So that's pretty cool. At least, I mean, I think it's pretty nice, but hey.
Yeah. And I haven't, I've obviously watched some games this season. I've been more consumed with the Roadrunner baseball, and most of my evenings are taken up with that if they're playing. But I'm going to get to the game in Houston on Memorial Day because the Twins are playing the Astros in Houston, and it's right after the CUSA tournament, so I'll already be in town. So I'm excited to see what it's like to kind of take the game in live with the new rules and how that is.
It's different. So, it feels rushed. I've seen people use the comparison of it feels like you're at a restaurant and they're trying to get you in and get you out and turn the table, right? It feels very rushed once you're in the stadium. But watching on TV, I think makes the biggest difference because especially being in the AL West, Astros and Rangers fans know you get those road games in Anaheim and in Oakland, they don't start till 9 p.m. Central in Texas, and like, forget it. Last year and years previous, you could watch maybe 3 or 4 innings before it's time for bed. So watching on TV, I think, has been the biggest change. It's still a little weird inside the stadium, at least for me, but yeah, I'm excited for you to see what it's like.
Yeah, very appropriate, by the way, very well timed, wearing the Houston Astros polo.
Yeah, I'm going tonight.
Okay.
Taking my son tonight. So
okay.
Had to represent. Plus, it's NFL draft going on, and I have a 3 or 4 years long standing boycott against the Houston Texans. So I'm kind of rebelling a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Ray, you continue to put your money where your mouth is. We obviously know about Meep Meep Apparel through your presence on social media. You're a big money donor for Alamo Audible, so you get that shout out on the episodes. And then we did the Where Are They Now feature a few months ago with you and Josh talking about that. But you also participated in UTSA Giving Day, matching the attendance for the women's softball game against Texas State and then the men's baseball game against Western Kentucky. That attendance came in right under 786. So, thank you for that and your donation to UTSA Athletics. I do want to say there have been times where I've noticed some discrepancies with the box score on UTSA Athletics. I was talking to Corey, I think, about this, Corey Davis, and sometimes you'll see a pitcher get credited with a win, even though he didn't go enough innings. So I'm really surprised. Kudos to the box score that they didn't just fudge those numbers a little bit. Because if it was me, I would have put a couple extra numbers in there,
Sure. And I think you probably see that a lot with every, I wouldn't even say college, but every sports team, they'll probably post the attendance on number of tickets sold, not necessarily how many people are in the gate. So I'm a little surprised they didn't bump that up as well. But as far as the donation goes, our good buddy Ben Price, did a great job. And when he talked to me about this last year and this year as well, this is about raising money. It's a fundraiser, right? So he asked me if it would be okay to give the dollar figure of what is the capacity, right? So it's actually a little bit more than the number of people that showed up. But happy to do it. It's not a lot more by any means, but which just brings you back to a facilities conversation because the max capacity for both stadiums is way too low. But
yeah,
that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, I think for the Bird Bath or Roadrunner Field, I think it's
like 600 or 650.
800 or maybe
800. Yeah.
So in a few years, hopefully if things keep going well and keep following in your footsteps, and if Coach Hallmark is still leading us at the helm, or if whoever else is, then they can keep things going. Maybe we're looking at a 5,000-6,000 capacity in a few years, and that'd be great.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
Well, so for those that have been listening, this is part 2 of our bonus content that we're putting on the regular feed for everyone, but it is a bonus episode. And I mentioned with Eddie, I wanted this to be a kind of signee update, Runners Rising. It's kind of turned into just a dedicated Runners Rising and UTSA Baseball podcast, which is more than okay. But Ray, what are you kind of coming on here to talk about regarding your involvement with UTSA Baseball and Runners Rising?
Yeah. Let's get to it. So, of course, it's not a secret anymore that, our UTSA Roadrunner baseball team is nationally ranked for the first time ever this year. We are in the midst of the best season in the history of this program. It's not a long history, but we are very proud of the history that we have. And, you tell me the math, but I mean, we got to win something like 9 of the next 14 games, I think, to hit 40 wins for the first time ever. The interest in the baseball program has never been higher than it is right now. There's actual momentum. There are people who have never, ever talked to me about UTSA baseball stopping me and saying, hey, I saw the Roadrunners are ranked. Hey, nice win beating the Aggies. The casuals, so to speak, putting in quotes, are noticing what's going on, right? And we really need to capitalize on that and ride the momentum. We've talked about Hallmark, amazing coach. We've got the right coach. We've got some players. We got some young players, and we want to keep those guys. And, and having conversations with some people very, very close to the program, there were some concerns expressed to me in a small group of alumni that it comes back to NIL, right? We've got to be positioned. We've got to have the ability to hold on to our guys, to hold on to the studs, to hold on to I'm not going to name any guys. I think we all know who the young studs are, but there was a definite, fear, paranoia, whatever you want to call it, that a lot of these guys, once the season's over, they're going to start getting some phone calls, DMs, text messages, whatever it may be, from some of the Power 5 programs around the state and in the region. And we don't want to let them go. We don't want to lose them, right? And, that started a conversation amongst us with some of the alumni. And, there's several UTSA NIL collectives out there that are doing great things. Most of them are very focused on football, which I totally understand. But then there's a couple, Runners Rising to be specific, that is broad. They are interested in supporting all of UTSA's athletes, or at least programs. And that's something that lines up very, very closely with, Josh and I's thinking on Meet Me Apparel. We want to help as many athletes out as we can. So we got to thinking, this group of baseball alumni, we start talking about it. We start looking at setting up a collective. And, if you're going to do a collective, you really want it to be 50, what is it, 501(c) or C3.
Mm-hmm.
So that people making donations can write that off against their taxes, right? That's a huge incentive. That way people don't think they're just dumping money and, never see a return for it, never see it again. But unfortunately, the process to get that set up is, a few months longer than we have in the rest of the season. So we started looking at other solutions, and, immediately I thought of Eddie and Runners Rising. We connected the first time ever, a month or 2 or 3 after, we launched Meet Me Apparel. We had connected and had a great conversation, kind of shared some ideas, shared our backgrounds, and shared our passion for the university and the athletics program. And it made a really, really big impression on me. And we've stayed in touch since then. I've seen him at football tailgates. We talk on the phone every once in a while, just kind of checking in. And I gave him a call and said, look, here's what we're talking about. Here's what we're doing. We want to earmark some dollars for baseball, right? And I know you guys have a couple of baseball players under agreement now. But what I'd like to do is start steering baseball alumni towards Runners Rising, right? And as long as you guys can, let me take a step back. The baseball alumni is extremely passionate, as I'm sure you've seen on the internet and heard, and very opinionated and mouthy. But where we do fall short, let's just be honest, as alumni, is donation dollars, right? And a big part of that, and a big part of the hesitation from baseball guys donating money, is there's a track record of dollars being submitted but not going to baseball, right? It goes into a general fund and it gets distributed amongst the other programs. Well, we've got a chip on our shoulder because when we were in school, basketball was the big program on campus, and now that there's football, that gets a ton of eyes, right? And they get a lot of support and a lot of resources that some of the other programs don't. And I totally understand why. I will never argue that point. But we want to see baseball do well. So when we donate money, we want to know that it's going to baseball. And I expressed that to Eddie. And at the time, they had just recently, unveiled on their website the option to pick which sport you want to donate towards. And then those dollars will go to the athletes that they've got agreements with in that sport. And that was a huge deciding factor in this, right? So, now when you go on their website to make the donation, you can choose baseball. So we had this conversation, and my vision for this and goal for this is, I'm gonna get a hold of the alumni email list, and I want to send out an email to these guys saying, hey, look, this is who I am. This is my a little bit of my story. This is where I'm coming from. I'm putting my money here, and I would love it if you guys, could help out in any way possible. And that's what we did. We sent out an email last week. And, so far it sounds like the response has been pretty good. Like we talked about last time, we're not expecting to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? We're not expecting to raise, Texas A&M level money. We just need to have some dollars in there. So if and when we get to the end of the season and one of our starters gets a phone call and starts looking, there is some resources available to entice them to stay, right? With everything Coach Hallmark has built, with the program, the winning tradition, the mindset, everything else, hopefully maybe $1,000, a few $1,000, will be enough to keep the guys here, right? And that's what we want to do. So I'm very, very happy and proud to partner with Runners Rising on this. I don't remember how many people were on the email list. I think the email list might be a little old. There's probably 50 or 60 of them that bounced back, couldn't be delivered. So, hopefully we can get this podcast out there to the baseball alumni and anybody that cares about UTSA baseball, even if you have $10 to share, we're looking for anything we can get, right? So that's the goal. That's the message, and everything helps. Of course, the facilities, a new stadium will go a long way in helping us recruit better players and retain people. But guess what? That's not happening overnight. I don't have $10 million laying around to start building a stadium, and I don't know many people that do. So we're trying to do what we can to make any kind of an impact on the, right now, short-term and mid-term success of this program, and to keep as many guys here as we can, to keep Coach Hallmark here as long as we can, and continue being ranked. Because it's really fun, Dan, being freaking nationally ranked. It's very fun. It makes me very proud, and I want to stay there.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it's hard for the listeners because it is such a new thing. One, the continued baseball success, starting to finally get away from that shot in the can success. Two, being nationally ranked. And then three, kind of like which one you follow. You'll see Baseball America, And some people, they kind of just look for the one that has us the highest. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. If it's a national poll, it's a national poll, and it all matters. And especially with baseball, I was just talking to Corey about this. RPI kind of is the final determinant on getting into regional or not. But if you're a good team and if you have a good RPI, you're going to be ranked, and vice versa. If you're ranked, you're going to have a good RPI. So I choose to use D1 baseball just because that's what the NCAA recognizes, and so it's easier to keep up and follow it. And I imagine that the committee probably looks at theirs, how they got to that place. I don't know. I reached out to them, and they gave me the cold shoulder and didn't answer the question. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, being ranked is awesome. You know who's not ranked right now? Texas A&M.
Hate to see it.
Texas.
Hate to see
Texas
it.
State.
Real shame.
Yeah, DBU's up there. TCU might still be up there. There's other Texas teams that are ranked, but UTSA is becoming a baseball school, and there's nothing wrong with becoming a baseball school. We know football is king, but I've mentioned this a few times on this podcast or on these different podcasts. The atmosphere that was East Carolina against UNC, like the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, you can't tell me that 6,000 screaming fans on a Friday night against in-state rivals is not something every program would love to have. The game against Texas State a few weeks ago, there was 1,095 people out there. It was wild. It was rowdy. The fans were getting into it, and I think that's what baseball does, because it brings everyone that much closer to the action. So you're right on top of the opposing team. You're right on top of the umpire, and be respectful, of course, but you can get in their ears and let them know when they missed a call.
And that's fun.
And football doesn't necessarily afford that the same way. It's so loud. There's so many other things going on. They got the helmets, and then baseball just provides such a unique environment. And I heard it on a podcast recently. It's just, I think sometimes people forget how romantic baseball can be, and that's what we're going for every time they go out on the field, is just that romantic feeling that the game provides. And so anything to help with that. And the other thing I want to mention or touch on that you mentioned, not knowing if every alumni is going to get the email, if they're going to look at it, but it's just all part of that networking. And, you're connected, 6 degrees of separation. You're connected to 5 or 6 guys. Those 5 or 6 guys are connected to somebody else. You've met people at the golf for the baseball golf outing every January. And that's just bridging that gap and widening that web of connections. So now maybe there might be a guy that played in 14 or 15 that doesn't get the email from you, but he hears about it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to toss some bucks to that. And he keeps trickling down. The tweet, so you mentioned you and a couple other guys. So the tweet went out on April 19th from Runners Rising. They specifically mentioned you, Trent Lockwood, and Josh Wilson, and just said, wow, thank you for your contributions. Can't wait to use your donations to beef up our support of UTSA baseball athletes. And then they had the link in there on how you can get involved. So they obviously recognize that, but that's awesome to see. It's awesome to see you guys get behind it. It's really, and this is probably out of line since he's not on the podcast to defend himself, but it's really great to see Trent do that, because with how much he talks on Twitter,
Yes.
It's nice to see him get behind it a little bit.
Dude, I agree. Look, I agree 100%. I said that earlier, that we're a very loud and opinionated bunch, and he's definitely at the top of that list, right? So
Yeah.
this is something that our group, right, that we were there together on campus, and we still have a big group text, and we get together a few times a year. This is something that we still talk about, right? Or we've been talking about, more and more, is we've got to create kind of a mind change shift in supporting the program, right? We've been talking about it, screaming about it for years, but no one ever does anything about it. And I guess I just got tired of that, right? So we want to start, like you said earlier, putting your money where your mouth is, and let's step up and do it. And if we can get, if we can influence even 10, 20 more people to give a few bucks, then, in my opinion, it's worth it, right? Like you mentioned, the 6 degrees of separation. If I can get to 10 people and they can get to 10 people and they get to 10 people, we get 500 people to donate $20. That's 10 grand, like that can make a difference. That can keep a couple of starters from going to Baylor or going to wherever, I just found out last night, bad job by me. I didn't realize this, I guess, because of COVID season, but we have a kid that played for us in 19 and 20, and he's starting in the outfield for Arkansas. I had no idea about that, right? I don't like seeing that. Dylan Rock last year was a bit of a different situation because he was grad transfer, and good on him. He went to A&M and made it to a College World Series. He was probably their best hitter last year. Can't blame him for that, right? But I don't like seeing that. I want those guys here. I want those guys making an impact at our university. So that's what it's all about. Let's just get people on board. And I'm not asking you for $1,000. I'm not asking for $500. I'm not even asking you for 100. Just donate what you can. If you got $10 to spare, great. $20, great. Whatever that number is that you're happy with and comfortable with, great. And just know that it is going to a good cause. The money is going to go to the baseball program, even though it's going to maybe a player's pocket and not towards turfing the rest of the field, right? But it's impacting the baseball program, and you get to write it off on your taxes, which is awesome. That's very important for me. So it is nice to see Trent and Josh and some of the other guys step up, and hopefully since that tweet went out, hopefully there's been a few more guys that have stepped up. So we'll see where this thing shakes out by the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think, Eddie and I talked about this a little bit when I was chatting with him. You obviously you've shared before how your college career unfortunately didn't take the direction you would have hoped for it to. But I guess, so 2 questions. How much of a difference would the NIL game have made for you and your teammates when you guys were playing?
Oh my God.
And then kind of the follow-up question, do you think, like, with baseball being, call it a minor sport, call it an Olympic sport, at the collegiate level? Well, it's not an Olympic sport because it has professionals, of course. But maybe it's not the top of the rung. Do you think schools are going to be pushing the NIL game more because they have that scholarship limitation and they have to work within the confines of that?
I think there's no doubt about that. Yes. To answer your first question, do I think it would have been a big deal? There's no doubt about it. And it's exactly like you just said, the scholarship limitation in baseball is it's absurd. I don't think Trent would mind, so I'm going to put his business out there. Trent and I came in the same class. I came out of high school. He came from junior college. I was your classic. I peaked in high school. I was pretty good in high school. I came in on a big scholarship for baseball, right? Like 50% of the scholarship was covered, books, tuition, and fees. Trent came in. I think Trent got his books paid for, and that was it. I got hurt immediately, didn't play that year. Trent was the conference hitter of the year, newcomer of the year. Is that fair at all? Absolutely not. If there was NIL dollars available and this was a mature NIL market, you can't tell me that Trent wouldn't have gotten something out of NIL, and it would have made a huge difference to him and his family and their finances. You just can't tell me. So yes, it would have made a huge difference for us. And absolutely, NIL is something that coaches are talking about during recruiting, right? I heard from, this is last year now, pretty early on, I was getting messages from some of the coaches like, keep it up. Thank you so much for doing this. Like, our recruits are asking about it when we're having meetings. So 100% NIL makes a huge difference. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I'll spin it this way to protect myself and not to imply anything, and I feel a little more comfortable speaking on it from this perspective because a few weeks ago, after UTSA got ranked by D1 Baseball, there were a lot of on-field interviews with Coach Hallmark and some of the players, and Coach
Yeah.
Hallmark mentioned the state of the facilities candidly. But if I'm a coach and if I'm trying to recruit some of these young guys, not even because Runners Rising, I want to be very clear. Runners Rising, the athletes that they mentioned, that's who they have right now officially. I don't know their plans for the future, but we can just talk about some of these young guys that are doing stellar. Matt King is just a sophomore. He's having a great season. Ruger Riojas, freshman, having a great season. Not the best, most recent outing, but overall great season. Zach Royce, freshman, had a couple rocky starts, had his best outing of the season against Houston Christian. That probably helped keep UTSA in that game until they could get the bats going. If I'm a Power 5 coach and if I'm coming to these guys, the very first thing I'm doing is showing them our facilities and what we're working with. Because I mean, why not? Like, because at the end of the day, baseball's baseball, but these kids and there's nothing wrong with it, but what they want and the attention they want and deserve, and you want to feel comfortable, like, feel good, play good, look good. That's my first pitch to them is locker rooms, seating capacity, hitting machines, hitting facilities, whatever. So it's more than just, as fans, we look at it from like a comfortability on our own enjoyment of the game, like getting up and down the bleachers, leaning back and having sciatic act up by the end of the game. But the players want it too. They're willing to just their grittiness and they'll ball out and they'll play the game. But if we want it, they want it even more, and they definitely deserve it. So
you want to have a place. You want to have a place that you're proud of to invite your family and your friends to come out and watch you. And a lot of these guys now, their high school stadiums are nicer, right? And it just is what it is. We don't need to get on a tangent again about facilities. We all know what it is. But you're absolutely right. Facilities is the first thing, and if we don't have that, which we don't, we need other things to point to say, this is a great place to come. You will benefit from coming here. And I think NILs, is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and I do want to recognize again, I mean, I've mentioned this a few times now, but after the FIU Game 2, Coach Hallmark reached 100 wins at UTSA. Do you know, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, do you know how many other coaches for UTSA baseball, if any, have 100 wins?
I don't know how many. I don't know how many. I would if I had to guess, there's probably 3 others that have 100. I want to say Coach Corbett, who was our head coach when we were there, is the all-time wins leader, followed by Coach Marshall, who took over after him. And then there's someone, forgive me for not knowing his name, from the 90s that's probably got there as well. But that's just a guess.
Yeah. Coach Hallmark, though, it's probably safe to say he got there the quickest.
He's got to be the fastest. I mean, I saw that and I was like, oh, wow, he's got 100 career wins.
Yeah.
Totally. And college, it's like, wait a minute, this is just UTSA. That definitely happened pretty quick.
Yeah. And that his first year was the COVID year. So they played, I mean, I think the season shut down like right before conference play. So
I think they played like 12 games or something. 15 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so we'll start to wrap things up here. Obviously, Ray, if you got more things you want to touch on and just get people to rally behind, the time is yours. But I would say, I mean, once again, thanks for coming on. You're definitely an early candidate, in my opinion, for the 2023 Domies Alumni of the Year category. I talked to Eddie about he fell just short to Tariq Woolen. Eddie did not make a concession speech. He did not ask for a recount. But I think you're right up there for just your contributions to Alamo Audible, what you're doing with Meep Meep Apparel, your involvement with UTSA Athletics, UTSA Baseball, and just, I mean, your own community too in Houston and what you're doing outside of UTSA. It seems like you're pretty involved, and definitely going in the right direction with a lot of things. So
I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say. I've been following the dummies for a long time, and what an honor that would be. That's for somebody else to decide. But man, that would be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie to you. And for Eddie's sake, losing to Tariq Woolen is nothing to be ashamed of. So, what can you do? But yeah, last two things for me. Obviously, I'm not going to make a big sales pitch here. I think I said what I had to say, and hopefully, it'll get across to a few people. But we've got to just keep the momentum going with this season. We've got a series at UAB this weekend. They're having a little bit of a down year. We really need to take care of business. I would love nothing more than to get out to a couple of big leads on Friday and Saturday and let Simon Miller get some rest. We've been running him ragged lately, and I'd really like for him to be as fresh as possible coming down the stretch. So, let's take care of business down there. And also, I do have I have a customer who's become a pretty good friend of mine through college athletics. He actually played baseball at UAB a couple of years after he's a year or two younger than me, but we have a good time going back and forth, especially during football season. So I'd really like to rub that in. And, you mentioned earlier, Dallas Baptist, baseball being romantic, right? I'm really, really looking forward to that series. They're a great program. They're kind of, if we look up a step in weight class, that's a great model for what we can be, what we should be, and what we should aspire to be. They took the outright first place lead last weekend when they swept La Tech, and we dropped game 3. So that series has major implications on who's going to win the conference. And I'd really, really, really love to get to San Antonio for that series. But, speaking of romantic, unfortunately, it's Mother's Day weekend. And yeah. I don't know if the mother of my children would appreciate that too much. So we will see what we can do. Maybe I can sneak over for the Friday game or something and then come back. But that's going to be a big one. You never want to look ahead, but I've got that series circled several times on the calendar. I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, not just because of who they're playing, but when it is. It's the second to last series of the season, regular season. It's the last home games for UTSA for the regular season. They're going to be right on the edge of 40 wins. So there's a chance they could hit it before, but they'd have to essentially run the table. And we know how baseball is, winning that many games in a row stuff. But yeah, I mean, they're 14-3, 15-3 in the conference between the two. DBU has the better RPI. I just looked, and their RPI today going into these weekend games are like 16. I mean, the outlets are talking about DBU hosting. So for so many reasons, such a big weekend, and yeah, implications are huge. Both teams are tied right now going into the Friday game with the 8th best winning percentage in Division I, not just mid majors, 31-10, 8th best winning percentage in D1. So not there yet. Some games before, but a big weekend, and could definitely be something special heading into the conference tournament. Speaking of that, just giving people a look ahead, got some things planned for our final Where Are They Now of the season, and then working out the details of doing a big conference tournament preview for you guys that would drop the day or two before the conference tournament in Houston. It is in Houston, not in the armpit of the United States, Mississippi anymore. So much easier for the Roadrunners to pack that out and have some kind of almost maybe hopefully turn it into a home field advantage type environment. So
absolutely.
But Ray, thanks again.
Yeah, I guess last thing. Look, if anyone listening to this has any questions, ideas, just wants to talk about it at all, by all means, reach out to me. I don't know if you guys are going to tag me in this or not. Whatever. Dan knows how to get a hold of me. Jared knows how to get a hold of me. I'm not hard to find. So please, by all means, reach out. And thank you for bringing up the conference tournament in Houston. It's 10 minutes from my house. I will be there. I'd love to see you guys, meet as many of you as possible. So if you're planning on coming to Houston for that series, for that weekend tournament, please let me know. It'd be wonderful to say hello.
Yeah, let's get a promo. Let's get a promo going. A free Roadrunner hat for the first. We'll think of something to from this episode specifically, a stat or a quote
Sure.
or something,
Sure.
and we'll put it out on Twitter and we'll say first UTSA baseball fan to go up to Ray at the conference tournament and
say,
mention
hey,
this part of the interview.
say, hey, you peaked in high school.
Yeah. That's what we'll do. We'll say
I love it.
you come up to you, say you peaked in high school. They get a free Roadrunner hats.
I'm game. All
right. Well, Ray, thanks again. I'll let you get going. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I know it was a little bit of a longer one between Eddie and Ray's interviews, but real good stuff and exciting to see everything moving in not only UTSA athletics, but UTSA baseball. So you guys have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.